Zara had always been strong. As a member of the Ultran species, her people were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and their warrior spirit. She was proud of her role as an emissary of peace, traveling across planets to settle disputes and build alliances. Yet even though she carried a facade of confidence and composure, deep inside, Zara's heart was shattered. It had been years since James disappeared. She had met him during a mission on Earth, back when she had been sent to establish peaceful relations between the Ultran and human civilizations. James was a human, an officer aboard a starship, and someone who had captured Zara's heart the moment they met. Their bond had been instant and deep, built on mutual respect and an undeniable connection. She had never imagined that something so simple as love would change everything. But it had. The war came and everything changed. An attack on the Earth ship where James served had left many of the crew lost. The reports indicated that James had been among those killed, but there had been no bodies, no finality to the story. No one had truly known for sure what had happened to him. Yet Zara couldn't accept it. She had tried to move on, forced herself to believe that he was gone, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his laugh, felt his hand in hers. It was this pain, this never-ending ache that kept her awake at night, lying in her bed on the sleek, sterile Ultran spaceship. It had been so long since she had seen him, touched him, or even heard his voice. She had buried herself in her work, traveling from one world to the next, hoping that with time the sorrow would fade. But it hadn't. She had never stopped thinking about him, even when she stood before leaders, negotiating treaties and signing agreements. He was always in the back of her mind, a constant reminder of what she had lost. Zara had come to terms with the idea that she might never see him again, but that didn't mean she had given up hope completely. There were moments, small flashes, where she allowed herself to dream of him still being out there. Maybe somewhere in some far-off corner of the galaxy, James was still alive. Perhaps he had been stranded, taken captive, or lost in the chaos of war. The possibility lingered in her mind, a small flicker of hope she refused to extinguish. Her life was full of contradictions. She had the highest rank among her people, a respected leader in their diplomatic missions. Yet none of that could fill the empty space inside her heart. Zara had spent countless nights staring out at the stars, wondering if James was out there, wondering if he was looking at the same sky. It was on one of those nights, as she stood in the observation deck of her ship, that the message arrived. At first, it seemed like another routine transmission, a report from one of her contacts in the human territories. She almost didn't open it, but something made her hesitate. Something about the sender's name felt familiar. She tapped the screen to decrypt the message, and her heart stopped. "Zara, he's alive," the message read. "James is alive." The words were short, simple, and yet they shook her to her core. Her breath caught in her chest as she reread the message. It was encrypted, which meant it came from someone who knew her, someone who was aware of her search for James. But the message contained no explanation, no details about where he was or how they knew he was alive. It was just those few words. Zara's mind raced. How could this be? How could James, after all these years, be alive? The possibility of it felt impossible, and yet it was a possibility. Her heart began to race, her pulse quickening. The flood of emotions that had been locked away for so long erupted in her chest. She had to know the truth. She had to find him. There was no time to waste. Zara's crew had been preparing for another diplomatic mission, but she couldn't focus on that now. The mission didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was finding James. She ordered her ship to reroute to the coordinates sent in the message. There was no guarantee that these coordinates would lead her to him, but she had to try. She couldn't live with the doubt. As the ship made its way through the vastness of space, Zara couldn't stop thinking about James. She imagined what he might look like now, what had happened to him over the years. Was he still the same man she had fallen in love with? Or had the time apart changed him, just as it had changed her? Zara's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. It was a transmission alert from the crew's communications officer. "Emissary Zara," the officer's voice crackled through the comms, "we've received more information about the message you decrypted." Zara's heart skipped a beat. She hurried to the communications station, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened the new message. The transmission was from a human resistance group that operated in secret on the fringes of the galaxy. The group's leader, a woman named Maria, had worked with Earth's military during the war, and she claimed to have information on James. Zara, the message began, I know you've been searching for him. He's not dead. I can't tell you everything right now, but he's out there. We've seen him. He's alive, but he's not free. We need your help to find him. Zara felt the weight of the message settle in her chest. This was it, the confirmation she had been waiting for. James was alive, but where was he? What had happened to him? The questions flooded her mind, but she pushed them aside for the moment. She had to stay focused. She had to find him. The journey was not going to be easy. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with threats from all sides. But Zara had never been one to back down from a challenge. She had faced countless dangers in her life, and this would be no different. She would find James, no matter the cost. As her ship sped toward the unknown, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation rising in her chest. She had spent so many years searching for him, hoping against hope that one day she would find him. And now, after all this time, it seemed like that day had finally come. The stars ahead seemed to shine a little brighter as the ship made its way through the void. She had a long road ahead of her, filled with uncertainty and danger. But Zara knew one thing for certain: she would do whatever it took to find James. The thought of being reunited with him, of holding him in her arms again, gave her the strength to press forward. She had waited for so long. Now she would not stop until she found him. And when she did, Zara promised herself she would never let him go again. Zara's heart raced as the ship hurtled through space, the stars stretching out like shimmering lights in the distance. She had never felt this sense of urgency before. The message from Maria had confirmed what she had always hoped deep down: James was alive. But with that confirmation came more questions than answers. Where was he? Why hadn't he contacted her himself? What had happened to him over the years? Her mind was filled with the endless possibilities, but Zara knew that she couldn't waste any more time thinking about them. There was only one thing that mattered now: finding James. The journey had already taken them far from the Ultran homeworld, to a place on the edge of known space. Maria's coordinates had led them to an abandoned planet on the fringes of the galaxy. There was no reason to think anything was wrong, but Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. She tried to push the thought aside, but it lingered like a dark cloud. Emissary Zara, we're approaching the coordinates. The communications officer's voice crackled through the ship's speakers. We've entered the atmosphere of the planet. Zara stood up from her chair and moved to the control panel. She studied the data on the screen. The planet appeared desolate, its surface cracked and barren. There were no signs of life, no bustling cities or thriving ecosystems. Everything about this place seemed lifeless, just the kind of place where people would hide. Her ship descended through the thick clouds, the planet's surface coming into view. Zara couldn't help but feel uneasy. The coordinates Maria had provided her led to an ancient facility hidden deep beneath the surface. Maria had described it as a holding cell, though she didn't provide any further details. As the ship landed, Zara's eyes scanned the barren landscape. The ground was rocky and dry, the remnants of what seemed like an old, forgotten civilization. She couldn't help but wonder why James would be here. Was he in danger? Was he being held against his will? Her mind raced with fear and anticipation. Prepare for landing, Zara ordered her crew, her voice calm but firm. We'll need to move quickly, stay sharp. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss, and the crew quickly disembarked. Zara led the way, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what they were about to find, but she was determined to get answers. The facility was located in a deep canyon, surrounded by towering rock formations that shielded it from view. As they made their way toward the entrance, Zara's thoughts turned back to James. What had he gone through? What had happened to him during the years they had been apart? She had no answers, only the hope that, somehow, they would find him here. The entrance to the facility was hidden behind a large rock formation, and Zara had to use her strength to move it aside. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway leading deeper into the facility. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were covered in strange symbols and markings that Zara didn't recognize. It was clear that no one had been here for a long time. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Zara's mind raced as she thought of the possibilities. Was James really here? Or had Maria's message been a trap, a cruel joke meant to draw her into danger? Every step she took brought her closer to the truth, but it also brought her closer to the unknown. After what felt like hours of walking through the winding halls, they reached a large chamber. The room was empty, except for a small console in the center. It flickered to life as they entered, and a holographic image appeared before them. The image was blurry at first, but slowly it focused into the face of a woman, Maria. "Zara, if you're seeing this message, it means you've made it," Maria's voice echoed through the chamber. "I don't have much time. They know I'm sending these messages, but I had to warn you. James is here, but he's not the same. They've changed him. He's been experimented on. I don't know what they've done to him, but he's not the man you knew. He's different now, but he's alive." "He's alive, and that's all that matters." Zara's breath caught in her throat as she listened. Different? What did Maria mean? What had they done to him? She clenched her fists in anger, her mind spinning with the new information. Whoever had taken James had experimented on him, altered him in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. But he was alive, and that was the one thing she needed to hold onto. "Maria, where is he?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Where is James?" The hologram flickered again, and Maria's face became more serious. "I've left a map," she said. "It will lead you to him, but be careful. There are people in this facility who won't let you leave easily. They're watching. You're not safe here." The hologram blinked out, leaving Zara with nothing but her thoughts and the cold, empty silence of the facility. A map. A way to find James. She felt a surge of determination. No matter what dangers lay ahead, she would not stop until she found him. She turned to her crew, who were standing silently, waiting for her orders. "We're going after him," Zara said. "Prepare yourselves. We're moving out." The map Maria had left was on the console, and Zara quickly studied it. It showed a series of tunnels that led deeper into the planet, down into a dark and dangerous underworld. It was the last place anyone would want to go, but it was the only place where she might find James. The crew moved out, following Zara through the winding corridors of the facility. The tunnels became narrower as they descended, the air growing thicker and colder. Zara could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on her, but she refused to let it stop her. James was out there, and she would find him no matter what it took. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a large chamber. The walls were lined with strange machinery, and in the center of the room stood a figure. It was James, but he wasn't the same. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt, and his body looked thinner than she remembered. He was standing motionless, his arms by his sides, as if he were waiting for something. Zara's heart clenched as she took in the sight of him. This wasn't the man she had fallen in love with. This was someone different, someone changed. "James," she called out, her voice breaking. His head turned slowly, and for a moment their eyes met. But there was no recognition in his gaze. He looked at her with emptiness, as if she were a stranger. Zara's heart shattered. She reached out to him, her hand trembling. "James," she whispered again, her voice filled with pain. He took a step forward, his movements slow and mechanical, as if his body was being controlled by something beyond his will. When he reached her, he stopped, his eyes still empty. "James, it's me, Zara," she said, her voice desperate. "Do you remember me? Please, you have to remember." But there was no response. James's face remained blank, and Zara's heart sank. She had found him, but the man she had loved, the man she had hoped to reunite with, was gone. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached out to touch his face, but before she could, a loud noise echoed through the chamber. A voice, cold and robotic, spoke from the shadows. "You should not have come here, Zara. He is ours now." Zara turned toward the voice, her fists clenched in anger. She had found James, but now she would have to fight for him. She would not let these people keep him, not after everything they had done. With a roar of defiance, Zara charged forward, ready to fight for the man she loved, ready to bring him back no matter the cost. Zara's heart was pounding in her chest as she faced the figure who had spoken from the shadows. She had found James, or at least the body of someone who resembled him. But now the truth hit her like a wave. James wasn't the same man she had known. He was broken, hollow, and trapped inside a body that wasn't his own. The person standing in front of her, no, the thing that had once been James, was a stranger. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber once more. "You should not have come here, Zara. He is ours now." Zara's fists clenched in anger. She had fought too long, too hard to give up now. She had traveled across the galaxy, risked her life, and endured unimaginable pain to find him. She would not let some unknown force take him away from her. She couldn't. The figure that had spoken emerged from the shadows. A man, or at least what had once been a man, stepped forward. His face was obscured by a helmet, but the shape of his body suggested power, control. He moved with precision, each step calculated, as if everything in this room had been designed for one purpose: to subdue, to break. Zara took a deep breath, her mind racing. The anger inside her was a fire, but she needed to think clearly. Her first priority had to be getting James out of this place, getting him back to himself, and she couldn't do that if she let her emotions blind her to the situation. The armored figure raised one hand, and Zara felt the air around her shift. She could feel the weight of power in his gesture. The temperature in the room dropped, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. "You are too late," the voice said, no trace of humanity in it. "James no longer remembers you. He is one of us." Zara's heart sank. She refused to believe it. She couldn't. She had loved him too deeply, shared too much with him, for this to be the end. James was still in there somewhere, and she would find him, no matter the cost. With a sudden movement, she drew her blade, the weapon glowing with the soft hum of energy. "No," Zara said, her voice low and steady. "He is not yours, and I will make sure he is free." The armored figure laughed, a sound devoid of warmth or humor. "You are foolish. There is no freeing him now." Before Zara could make another move, the figure lunged toward her, faster than she had expected. His armor glinted in the low light, and with one swift motion, he knocked the weapon from her hand. Zara stumbled back, momentarily thrown off balance by the force of the strike. But she didn't stay down. With the fury of 1,000 battles, Zara leapt back to her feet, her eyes blazing. She wasn't going to let this monster win. She wasn't going to let him take James. Not after everything she had gone through to find him. "James," she shouted, her voice trembling with desperation. "I know you're still in there. You have to remember me." The armored figure moved to strike again, but this time Zara was ready. She ducked low, avoiding the blow, and swept her leg out to trip the figure. The force of the fall made the ground shake, but the armored man didn't stay down for long. He got back to his feet with a speed that startled Zara. She had to act fast. "James," she whispered, her voice soft but full of hope. "Please remember me. We were in love. We were supposed to be together. Don't let them take you from me." For a moment the world seemed to pause. The air grew still, the sounds of battle fading into silence. Zara's heart raced as she waited, hoping against hope that the man standing before her, the man who had once been James, would react. And then, a flicker. A brief moment where the cold, empty expression in James's eyes shifted. It was so quick, almost imperceptible, but Zara saw it. For a split second, the man who had been her lover, the one she had lost all those years ago, was there. His eyes softened, his lips parted as if trying to speak. But before Zara could move, the armored figure, whoever he was, rushed forward again, blocking her path. "Enough," he said, his voice colder than before. "You have failed." Zara's mind was in turmoil. James was in there. She knew it. She could feel it. But she didn't know how much longer she could keep fighting like this. The figure was too strong, and James, her James, was lost in the depths of whatever had been done to him. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting the room in shadows. Zara barely had time to react before a bright light exploded in the center of the chamber, temporarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she saw another figure, this one standing in the doorway. It was Maria. She had come. The resistance leader rushed into the room, her face grim but determined. "Zara, you have to stop," Maria said, her voice sharp. "This isn't the way to save him." Zara turned to face Maria, her mind racing. "What do you mean?" she demanded. "He's in there." "He's still alive, and I can't just leave him like this." Maria shook her head. "You're right, James is still in there, but you can't fight it, not like this. You need to let him remember on his own terms. Force won't do anything but make it worse." Zara felt a stab of frustration. She had waited so long for this moment. She had fought for years to find him, and now that she had, she was supposed to just stand back and wait for him to remember. "I can't wait any longer," Zara snapped. "I can't just let him stay like this." Maria stepped forward, her hands raised in a calming gesture. "I know, but there's another way. If we can trigger his memory, if we can connect with him emotionally, he might remember you. But you have to let go of the anger. Let him see you for who you are, not as someone trying to fight for him." Zara's fists clenched at her sides. It was hard to hear this, hard to accept that the one thing she had been clinging to, the fight, the battle, wasn't going to bring James back. But she had to trust Maria. She had no other choice. Zara took a step back, trying to calm her racing heart. She turned to look at James once more. He was still standing there, his eyes empty, but there was something different about him now. Something that wasn't there before. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if he was listening. He was waiting for her. Slowly, Zara moved closer, her hand outstretched. "James," she said softly, her voice filled with raw emotion. "I know you're still in there. You're the man I love. You always have been. And I know that deep down you remember us. You remember everything we shared. Please come back to me." James's eyes flickered again just for a moment, but this time it lasted longer. His hand twitched, and for the first time since Zara had found him, there was a spark of recognition. "James," Zara whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm here. I'm not leaving you. Not again." The armored figure stepped back, watching with cold detachment, but Zara didn't care about him anymore. She didn't care about anything except the man standing in front of her. And then, as if a veil had been lifted, James's eyes cleared. He blinked, his head tilting slightly as if trying to understand what was happening. The coldness that had surrounded him seemed to dissipate, replaced by a faint but unmistakable spark of recognition. "Zara," he whispered, his voice hoarse and unfamiliar, but still it was his voice. Zara's heart skipped a beat. She reached out, and this time, when she touched his face, he didn't pull away. She had found him. He was back. And together they would face whatever came next. Zara's breath came in short, sharp bursts as she stood face to face with James. It had been so long since she had seen the man she had loved, and now, here he was, standing before her again, alive. The moment they had shared earlier, the flicker of recognition in his eyes had filled her with hope. But even as joy surged in her chest, she knew their journey was far from over. James was back, but he was still lost in many ways. The memories, the emotions, the pieces of who he had once been, they were still scattered, fragile like a broken mirror she was trying to piece back together. "James," Zara whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin, the faint pulse of life beneath. "I've waited so long. I never gave up on you." James blinked, his eyes focusing on her, but there was still a lingering confusion in them. The woman before him, the alien with the radiant eyes and the strength of a warrior, felt familiar, but it wasn't all coming back to him. The memories were still clouded, tangled in a web of pain and uncertainty. I don't remember everything," James said, his voice hoarse as though he hadn't spoken in years. "But I remember you." His gaze softened, and Zara felt her heart swell with relief. At least some part of him recognized her. "James," Zara said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. "You're not alone anymore. I'm here. I'm not leaving you." He nodded slowly, but his expression was filled with doubt. "I don't know who I am. I don't know what they've done to me." The words cut through her like a blade. James had always been strong, always so sure of himself. And now, here he was, unsure of his identity, of everything that made him who he was. The man she had known, the one who had laughed and shared stories with her under the stars, was buried under layers of fear and confusion. "They did things to you," Zara said softly, her voice filled with pain. "But I promise you we'll fix this. We'll find a way to heal you." James looked at her, a faint flicker of hope in his eyes. But it wasn't enough, not yet. Zara knew that. The road to healing, to getting James back to the person he had been, was long and uncertain. But she wasn't going to let him go through it alone, not again. A low rumble echoed through the room, and the ground beneath them shook. Zara's senses went on high alert, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at her side, though she knew it wouldn't help in the face of whatever was coming. She turned her head to the side, her eyes scanning the shadows. A voice, cold and mocking, came from the doorway. "I see you found him," the figure said, stepping into the room. It was the same man who had spoken earlier, the one who had been controlling James. He was taller than Zara, clad in dark armor that seemed to absorb the light around him. His presence was overpowering, his voice carrying an air of finality. Zara stepped forward, placing herself between James and the figure. "What have you done to him?" she demanded, her voice fierce. "What have you turned him into?" The figure chuckled, a hollow, empty sound. "He is exactly what he was meant to be, a tool, a weapon. We did nothing more than refine him." Zara's fists clenched at her sides. The man's words were like poison, and they made her blood boil. She wasn't going to let anyone take James from her again, not without a fight. "James is not a weapon," Zara shouted, her voice strong and unwavering. "He's a person. And I will not let you turn him into something he's not." The figure's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You misunderstand," he said. "You can't take him away. He's been altered. He is ours now." "No," Zara said, shaking her head. "He's mine." He always was. You cannot control him, not anymore. The man's eyes narrowed. You are making a mistake. You cannot save him. He is beyond saving. Zara took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't defeat this man alone. The odds were too stacked against them, and the man's power was overwhelming. But she also knew that she wasn't alone anymore. James was here, and he had a part to play in this battle. He had too. She turned to James, her eyes locking with his. James, she said softly, her voice filled with tenderness, I know you're still in there. You have to fight. You can do this. Remember who you are. You are strong. You are more than what they've made you. James's eyes fluttered, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. For a moment, it seemed like he was fighting, struggling against the control that had been forced upon him. Zara's heart surged with hope. She could see it. He was still in there, still capable of coming back. She had always believed in him, and now she was certain he could break free from the chains that bound him. The armored figure stepped forward, his gaze fixed on James. You cannot undo what has been done, he said coldly. He will never be the same. Zara refused to listen. She wasn't going to give up on James, not now. James, she said again, her voice calm but filled with emotion, I love you. I know you're still in there. Fight for us. Fight for who you were. For a long moment there was silence. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. Zara's heart beat loudly in her chest as she waited for James to respond. The figure in the armor stood still, watching, waiting for the inevitable. And then something shifted. A tremor ran through James's body. His eyes, once clouded with confusion, cleared. Slowly, his hand moved as if reaching for something deep within himself. Zara held her breath as she watched him. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. Zara, James's voice was faint, but it was unmistakable. The warmth in his words made Zara's heart swell. He was back, he was here. Zara rushed forward, her arms reaching for him. James, she cried, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled him close, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. You're back. I knew you'd come back to me. James blinked, his hand hesitating for a moment before he placed it gently on her shoulder. I don't know how, he whispered, his voice filled with confusion. I don't remember everything, but I remember you. Zara's eyes filled with tears as she gazed up at him. She had waited so long for this moment, and now it was finally here. They were together again, but the battle wasn't over. There were still forces out there who wanted to take him away, to destroy everything they had fought for. The armored figure stepped back, his expression darkening. You think you've won? This is not over. There are others who will come for him. You cannot protect him forever. Zara's grip on James tightened. I don't need to protect him, she said firmly. We'll protect each other. Together we're stronger than anything you can throw at us. With that, Zara turned, leading James away from the armored figure and toward the exit. The battle was far from over, and there were still many challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, Zara felt a sense of peace. She had found James. She had brought him back, and no matter what came next, they would face it together. As they walked out of the chamber, hand in hand, Zara knew that this was just the beginning of their journey. The galaxy was still full of dangers, and there were still enemies who would stop at nothing to tear them apart. But Zara didn't care. As long as they were together, she knew they could face anything. For the first time in a long time, Zara allowed herself to believe in the future. Together, they would build a new life, one where love and hope would guide them. And no one, no force in the galaxy would ever take that away.